All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. It is a bright and sunny Tuesday here in Tampa, at least for the moment, because we're in that time of year where it rains every day at least once. And with all the tropical weather we've had recently, it's been really rainy here. But I hope all of you are enjoying your morning or your afternoon. And welcome to the table. So joining me at the table today, I'm really excited to introduce to all of you Brittany Leonard. So thank you. And Brittany sits in Vegas. So thank you for joining us. I know it's early for you out there, but you're an early person anyway, because you're former military, right? So didn't you used to have to get up at like dark 30 every day or something? So this shouldn't be that early for you.
Right, you'd think I'd be better at this by now, but
But no, yeah, I don't do 8 a.m. meetings anymore. It's the one thing as an entrepreneur I no longer have to do, and I love it. So today we are here to talk about all things culture. And Brittany is also an entrepreneur in the consulting space of people and human resources. And she has a really interesting niche segment of business where she really focuses on helping small businesses build, grow, correct, transform. And her title is Work Culture Strategist, which I truly love. I think that's a great way to explain what you do, to make it, I think, easier for some people to understand, because when you start talking about, oh, well, I help you operationalize your values, they're like, and what does that mean in English? So I think it's great that you came up with that. So congratulations to you for that. Before we get too far into the conversation, I always try to let everyone know who is watching live. We love the interaction. I love the questions that you throw out to us, your comments. I do my best to bring them forward into the live stream. If you're out there, say hi, let us know. And any comments that we can't get to, I will certainly answer them after the broadcast, but I try to make this as interactive for everyone as possible. So with that, Brittany, welcome. Thank you for being here. I would love for you to kind of tell your story of your journey. As I did mention, you are former military in the Air Force. So thank you first for your service. Very, very appreciated. Not something I think I would have ever been successful at. I would have gotten kicked out in about 30 minutes for not mouth shut. So mad respect for all of you who give your time, efforts, energy, and some of you your lives for our country and keeping us as safe as possible. So I truly do appreciate that. And I want to hear your journey, how you went there and ended up where you are. So let's start with that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on. I've been excited to have this time with you, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess long story short, I went in the Air Force at 17. I went in immediately after high school. So that kind of started my adulting. And I did 8 years. I started off as a jet engine mechanic. So that's kind of where my blue collar situation came from. And then I did a cross train, and I, towards the end of my career, did a flight attendant for the Secretary of Defense. And that was still kind of blue collar, surprisingly, because a lot of people think that it's just like, you're a Southwest flight attendant and you just hand out peanuts. No. We went to culinary school, and we had to cook for 90 people on a jet, 12 different meals while we're traveling around the world. It was nuts.
How cool is that, though? Like, how many people can say they had that experience? That's amazing.
Yeah, honestly, it was one of the best experiences. I'm super happy I got picked to do it after I applied, and it was intense. It was very hard work, but I got to travel all around the world, so I couldn't complain.
Yeah, that doesn't suck.
No. So that's kind of where that ended for me. I got out of the service because I was getting to the point where I was like, my mouth is going to get me in trouble. I need to go. Because things just kind of started to change. The culture in the military started to change. And I was like, it's just, and we have 3 values in the Air Force that are really important. And one of them was service before self. And I felt like I did not align with that anymore. I was all about, service before self, not seeing family, not seeing a lot of events, when families, weddings, babies being born, things like that. Just always putting the service before myself. And that was fine. But I was getting to that point at the end of my career where I was like, I want to put myself first. And so because I didn't align with that value anymore, I felt like it was best for us to part ways, even though I loved it and very much appreciated it. Which is why I always come back to values within the culture situation, because I feel it's important for people to align with said company values. Long story short, I got out and I did some military contracting, because that's usually an easy segue if you can get into that, and went into a NASA contracting space and got into a real terrible toxic workplace where this billionaire guy who thought he was Elon Musk was going to spit in people's faces as he screamed at people, and it was just real bad. And I was just like, I was in the military at some point. I was on anxiety medications. I got off of it, but towards when I was in that NASA contracting space, I kept looking at my bottle like, I can't deal with this. And I was like, you know what? There's no place that's worth me being under that much stress that I need to resort to medication. That's insane. I'm a holistic hippie person anyway. I'm like, this is nuts. So I quit the same day that my boss, which was the VP, quit, because when she quit, the CEO looked at me. He's like, "You were military, right?" And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? But I was like, yeah. And he was like, "You're gonna come work for me now." And I was like,
yeah, that's
right? Like, you wrapped your mind. So I ended up packing my stuff and leaving. And I realized, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I don't want to do this. So long story short, went to Tony Robbins seminar. Was like, oh, well, these people get to do entrepreneur things. Why can't I? So I sat for 6 months, and not just sat there with nothing. It was a lot of thinking and investing and figuring out what I wanted to do. Came up with work culture consultant. It wasn't anywhere. And also, in the beginning stages of this, like a year and a half ago, people were like, what is that? And I realized I had to brand it and make it real. So now here I am today.
Now here you are. Well, what a great story. What a great journey you've had. You're young in your age, which, congratulations. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little jelly because it's been a minute since I've been your age.
Wow.
You have had those experiences, right? Is amazing. And to be able to then take those experiences and apply them into a career that you didn't necessarily see for yourself early on, right? It's something that you've evolved into. And I give you a ton of credit for that, because not a lot of people are able to make that leap and make those connections. So I think it's great. I've spent the past, 20 some odd years doing this. And
don't look it.
Yeah, well, I invest a lot in Botox these days. Like, I'm not going to lie, but whatever, it works. And I will say the one thing about not being skinny is that you don't age as quickly, because you keep the fat in the places you need it. I have it everywhere else, but whatever. So culture perspective, though, I think you've had some really interesting exposure to great cultures, and then you can see them slip, and then you've had exposure to some really toxic cultures. And what I find interesting about that, and I'm sure you've said this to your clients, because I've said it to my clients, is that culture is the way you feel when you are in a place or a space or interacting with a group of people, right? Because a company is nothing more than a legal document, right? That's a legal entity. But what makes it an organization and something that comes to life is the people who work within it. And the way in which you feel when you have those interactions is the culture of the organization. And so to see it ebb and flow and to change and evolve in both good and bad ways, it makes you sit back and think, like, what's driving that? What makes the difference? And it always boils down to people and how much influence certain individuals do or don't have within an organization? And then how is it anchored, right? What are the expectations of the way in which we behave in an organization? And a lot of the work I do with operationalizing values and helping folks understand why that's so critical is because if we don't have a framework and we don't have that map to anchor to, it's the wild, wild west, right? It's a free for all. And I have a client right now, I'm sure you can relate to this, and there's one individual who is just really difficult to work with, and all of the employees complain, and he doesn't see me as a person, he doesn't respect me or my time, and he doesn't make me feel cared for or that I belong here. And so I delivered this feedback. You'll love this. Delivered feedback to him very directly because I'm kind, but I'm direct. And he said, well, that's just my style. It's what's made me so successful. And, people have to adapt. And I just said, your style sucks, friend. And I care about you as a leader, but that is not going to fly. It's not going to fly with me because I can see right through it. And your ego needs to be left at the door. For you to sit and say that it's just your style and it's what's made you so successful is not acceptable. And if you want to be a leader in a workplace, then you're the one who has to change, not them, right? Mm-hmm. And in this particular company, we're creating their values. They don't have them yet. They've been around for several years. It's a startup. And this is what I keep bringing it back to that, right? What values do you want? So in your experience, and that's just one story, I'm sure we could sit here and share, quote unquote war stories about culture. But I would love to hear from you in the time that you've been working, right? You've been doing it for about 1.5 years now. What has jumped out at you as the root cause for culture toxicity?
It seems to always come down to a lack of communication or a proper way of communicating, whether that be communicating positive things or how they communicate is just negative. When I see, long story short, in the beginning, I focused on trying to fix toxic work cultures. And then I realized that was a bad business venture because people who already have toxic businesses don't want to admit that because they don't have the self-awareness. They don't want to have the self-awareness. They don't want to think that they're the bad leader and that their style is a bad way of doing things. So then I pivoted to, let me start from the ground up because we, in that space, they're more moldable. They're more open to listening to us.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I saw just being within cultures, that were toxic. It was just lack of communication, this and that. And then that leads to a lack of trust because if you're not communicating properly, how can people trust you? Because they don't believe anything that you're saying. And even when you want to try to change things for the better, at that point, it's almost lost cause because they don't trust you. So whatever you're communicating, even if it's now better, now trust is gone. So it's like all of crap.
And it's not a light switch, right? It's not a switch. There's not a silver bullet, and there's nothing that's going to happen in 30 days that's going to transform a toxic workplace. It just doesn't happen. And I think you're smart in recognizing that early on. Culture transformation is hard work. It's stressful. It can be anxiety. There's a lot of it is not fun in the beginning, right? To break through, to get somebody to hear you and understand that oftentimes it's them is quite the challenge, right? So I give you a lot of credit for recognizing that early on. I still do a lot of transformation work, and I find that it's where we start is our values, right? What are the shared values that we have? And let's look, if your organization has values, that's great. Let's look at them. Let's analyze them. Have you defined them, right? Because what we often see is lots of words on the wall, right? Or words on a sheet of paper. And here's our company values. Great. What does that mean? What does that mean here? Because if you put 10 people in a room and you ask all 10 people to define integrity, because lots of people love integrity as a value. Okay, great. Tell me what that means. And you're going to get 10 different definitions of what integrity means. So we have to your point about communication, we have to create standard work We have to create standard understanding and methodology on what does integrity mean in this organization. And then I try to take it a step further with most of my groups, and I'm sure you do too, is not only do we define, like, here's what integrity means in an ideal state within this company. It means X, Y, and Z. Here's what it means if you're going overboard, if you're over-indexing on this, or if you're under-indexing on this, right? So I think it's so important, because when we don't do that, we don't have a holistic and complete framework. So when I say we operationalize our values, that's what I mean. We define the ideal state, and then we define what it means to go too far in one direction or too far in another. Because just like anything in the world, too much is too much and not enough is not enough. Wine in and of itself is not harmful. But if you're drinking 10 bottles a day, you might have an issue, right? So the same thing happens with values. Teamwork, great value. Lots of people love it. But what happens if you're over indexing, if you're over leveraging teamwork? What does that manifest itself as, right? Failing to take ownership, not being accountable, blaming others. Well, I didn't fail, the team failed. I couldn't get my team to do it, right? So we have to give our leaders the language and our employees the framework so that we can anchor back to that. So when somebody's going off the range and they're going rogue and they're not behaving well, or they're not interacting well, or you see your culture slipping, you have that framework to say, okay, how are you doing this? And here's the language you can use to help reframe it for this person. How are you able to bring those things to life for your clients? And how are you able to get them to see the value in that clarity? And what success have you seen with that?
Kind of like you mentioned, when we all have different definitions as to what things are. So with like executive teams, when like the CEO wants to bring everyone in that's part of his team to help, create things, we kind of go over that same thing. Like, what does that mean to you? Like the CEO usually, me and him or her go and we figure out what it is that he wants or she wants the values to be. But then we bring it back to the team because he or she wants to figure out whether or not, because I'm thinking of one client right now, so I keep saying he, to figure out what the team feels about that. And then they kind of dive into it. Like you said, with integrity, they definitely all have different versions of what that is. And what I learned from a CEO that was on my podcast is, and he already had all his ish together, if you will, that he likes to, put it all up and see what everyone's definition is, and then be like, okay, so let's talk about a time where this is going to be bad for us, or this is going to be good for us, kind of like you mentioned. So I don't think it was integrity. It was something, though, that they went out on the town and, went drinking and this is that. And this, it wasn't integrity. Who was it? The CEO from Gravy. He was actually on one of my lives. It was him that told me this story. Casey Graham, if you guys follow him on LinkedIn. They all went out and she bought one of the fanciest bottles, and she was kind of being a cork sniffer. She was just being really like overboard and bougie, and it just didn't align with one of their values. And I just wish I knew what one of those values were.
It's okay.
Off the top, but whatever she was doing, it was just really uncouth, and it didn't align with their values. And because she she was like an intern or something like that, they just didn't even hire her, because they realized that like it wasn't in alignment. So he kind of uses that example with his people going forward. Like, this is one of our values. This is what it looks like when it's good, and this is what it looks like if it's not going great, just like you said. So I think that's a really good exercise.
Yeah. And, I love that. I love that you have a client who is insightful enough to see through the short term, right? Because a lot of the organizations, they want that short term win. They're like, oh, we defined our values. It's great. But they don't take that next step to define the plus and the minus, the delta, right? Of where it can go wrong. And the unintended consequences of not doing that are significant, right? One of my clients who I've worked with in the past, one of their values, and I've shared this before, is get shit done. That is one of their company values, right? And as much as it's fun and I like it, and I love that, it drives that idea of being action oriented and everybody's, moving in the same direction, hopefully.
But
this organization was suffering from chaos. Everybody felt like it was just constant chaos. So the individual I was working with in the HR space, I was like, let's do this, because I was coaching her one-on-one. I said, I want you to do an analysis of your last annual performance review and tell me which one of your values was the most cited throughout the reviews, which one was ranked the highest, and which one was leveraged the most heavily in your performance reviews. So she did the analysis. She came back and she said 5-1, get shit done was on every review. It's what everybody talked about. It was really the only thing people talked about. And I said, and that's your core problem right there, because we're measuring the results, but we're not measuring how we got there. This is not Machiavellian society anymore, guys. The ends does not justify the means. And this is where I think a lot of organizations get it wrong, with the best intentions, right? Because we think, oh, wow, get shit done. That's so trendy and fun and exciting. And it can be. But what we didn't do is we didn't define what it means for this organization and what happens if you go too far one way or too far the other. And so we have salespeople undercutting other salespeople. We have people stealing client groups. We have all this infighting because all that they think matters is getting it done. So when I work with organizations, we take the time. I use that example. There's some other examples that I'll bring in as to why that next step of defining it is so important. And I've done value surveys. So there's an organization I'm working with now that we're also creating values for. I met with the executive team, went through the whole exercise that you talked about, right? Like, what are the values you're looking for? What are your top 5 most important values in ranked order? And I give them a worksheet of values. And if anybody wants that, I'm happy to share it with you. I usually have it sitting right here, actually. Where is it? I know it's right here. Here it is. Last week, I sent this out to a bunch of people, but it lists commonly used values within personal and organization. So if anybody wants that, comment below with your email and I'll send it out to you. And then we do a rank order of what the executives believe. And then I take that same data and send it out to the entire employee population and ask them to rank order their top 5 values. And then we compare, and then we start to narrow it down and craft it from there. So everybody feels like their voice is heard. Mm-hmm. In doing that, I think it helps the buy-in from the bottom up and the top down. And you also get to see where the gaps are, because how often have you seen the executives think, oh, it's all great, but then the employees are like, not so much, right? And this is what we need. And you focus a lot on the difference between blue collar workers and white collar workers and the experiences between the two. How have you been able to bring that into your work to help crystallize and clarify for people that, one experience doesn't dictate the experience of everyone? And let's kind of look at that holistically. Tell me how you're doing that with your clients, because I think you've made some really impactful posts around making sure that you're including everyone.
Thank you. Usually, I guess that's been more like executive coaching sessions when obviously it's all revolved around culture. And, I just bring up the fact that it's just talking about it. Like, what do you know about, when's the last time that you went and did a walk around in your company? Always. Because there's usually a lot of people that they don't know. Like, when's the last time you just talk to one of your fabricators or something like that? Because that in itself, when I have to put someone on blast like that I don't know when the last time it was that I have walked around. It gives them that maybe I need to do something about that and I should do it more. Because you can't expect people to have trust in you. You can't expect people to assume that you care, because when you do these those speaking events, all hands and stuff, and you're like, I care about you, and this is not, when you don't prove that. You don't walk around. No one knows who you are. They've never had any interaction with you. And obviously there's bigger companies and it's harder, but especially for like medium and startups, you have no excuse to not walk around and say something. So then obviously when I talk to them about blue collar, like I've been there, like, and a lot of the times is that people are disrespected and as a blue collar because they feel like they're looked at as stupid, like they're only good for one thing. And I'm like, when's the last time you gave someone an opportunity to prove to you that they can, you know, maybe be start going up into the white collar space and managing, you know, people. Like, you got to give people the opportunity and the chance, because you'll be very surprised as to, you know, the entrepreneurs within your company can be blue collar. So I just, you know, give them these examples as to, you know, what it's like to be blue collar so that they can have an idea. And then, like you said, kind of with the sales space, there's a lot of, you know, salespeople, like white collar, whatever, and there's a disconnect. Usually half the time, you know, like these salespeople are doing their thing, but they're not taking into consideration, and we'll say like a solar company, like people are selling like crazy solar stuff, but it's the blue collar guys are like, we can't keep up. Like that's great, but we don't have the resources, the money, the budget, the this is that. And then everyone's looking at the blue collar like it's their fault, you know, and then that's where kind of like tensions come into play. And then you've got to look back at the executive team, like, listen, like you might want to rein back on your salespeople guys, because if you can't keep up, you know, what do you want your guys to do? And then that's where the tension comes into play, and you need to be that buffer.
Yeah. And, you know, even large organizations can do that. In my days at Amazon, you know, Amazon is a very, they practice a lot of agile practices, which I love. And they would do Gemba walks twice a day, right? And Gemba is Japanese for go to be, which is agile. Anybody who's in Six Sigma or anything would know that. And twice a day, they do Gemba walk, where the GM, the assistant GM, somebody from HR, somebody from finance, somebody from anybody who is in a leadership role does the Gemba walk twice a day. And you go see where the work is happening. To your point, right? Because you've got salespeople out there promising the world. You've got marketing people creating marketing messages and all of these things that are happening, and often happening in a bubble for people who have never walked out to the manufacturing floor or what have you. And one of the things that I did when I was a CHRO is I took a leaf out of Amazon's book. I was there for a few years, and we created workstations for the human resources business partners. We created workstations for them out on the manufacturing floor. And they spent several hours every week out there so that employees could have access to looking at information and asking questions that was intuitive for them on their walk paths, right? As they're walking to break, as they were walking in and out, so that they didn't have to take time off of their clock or off of their personal time to walk over to HR. We went where they existed so that we could also see what are the challenges that they're dealing with every day, because you don't know. You think you know, but you don't know, right? Until you're actually there. We make a lot of assumptions about things that are usually very inaccurate until you're standing there and really listening and observing, so that you can understand what people are dealing with on a daily basis. It's such a huge opportunity for organizations to really get more involved in all aspects of the organization, not just the manufacturing floor, right? We need to understand what it means to be a salesperson. I've gone on ride-alongs with salespeople so I could go out in the field and interact with clients, hear the questions clients are asking, so that I can then take that back and help craft the right people support and strategy so they can do the best job possible when they are out on the road. When you are in the space, you can see the challenges. It's really hard to be an on-the-road salesperson because your office is a car, right, for the most part. And so you're out 8 or more hours a day driving around, going to visit with your clients. And then you get back and you do your busy work at your desk, or you're trying to figure it out while you're like eating your lunch in your car. So, you know, we ordered some computer desk type things so that they could actually work productively in their cars and feel less like they were trying to juggle everything and things were going to fall and spill and that kind of stuff. So there's so much value to going to see what your people are doing, regardless of where they're working, because you will absolutely learn more than you can ever imagine by doing that. So I love that you're encouraging your clients to do that as well. Really, really important. I'm looking at some of the comments as they're coming. Yes. Hey, Bonnie, thanks for being here. Yes, it also absolutely begins to build trust. The more you can put yourself out there and show people that you're in it with them, not just say it at town halls, to your point, it goes an awful long way for sure. And not listening to learn is some of the opportunity for sure. Sarah shares, employees want HR to engage with and understand them. Absolutely. The biggest complaint you hear is how they just are holed up in an office. So of course, employees don't feel comfortable. So true. And I do want to share with people who are not in HR, some of the reasons why your HR folks might be holed up in an office behind locked doors is because there's a lot of information that has to be protected, right? Your employee information has to be protected and locked up so that everybody can't see employee files, salary data, personal medical information, all that kind of stuff that your HR folks deal with needs to be protected. That being said, really, I believe top-notch people in the HR space get up and leave that space and go out into the organization and meet with people or through Zoom or whatever tools they have so that they're not just sitting there behind a desk 8 to 12 whatever their work hours are, right? So we do need to integrate more into our businesses. So I love that. Okay, so Brittany, what is the biggest challenge you see your organizations facing right now? Like if somebody wants to hire you, what are they solving for? What would inspire them to reach out to you, and what can you help them with?
Pain points would be maybe the navigation of the remote space now, like how they're going to do that while building and growing. So helping them brand that new culture they're trying to figure out is challenging even for me. But people have to understand that now. God, if someone just says the new normal again, I might cringe, I might die. But I don't know what else to say. But this new space that we're all in, we have to navigate it, and we have to understand that. We have the ability now, and there's a silver lining in all this, that we've realized that we can go remote. A lot of jobs can now. So if we take the micromanaging out of it, and like I have a client who is like, this is going great. Productivity has actually gone up. What can we do now? And you can take all that overhead money that you don't have to have office space anymore, and you can utilize that to your advantage, and you can grow throughout the state, throughout the country, depending on who you are. And you're getting more jobs to your state and or your country, because you're now able to have all this extra money to grow because you don't have an office space. So like that's kind of what I'm seeing now, is that people are trying to figure out, how are we going to do this remote thing, and how are we going to keep people engaged is obviously the big thing. And there's various ways to do that. But some people are, that's where it comes to like introverts and extroverts. Some people are happy. Like I'm the type of person that like, I don't need to have a group. I don't need to, surprisingly, people think I'm an extrovert. I'm not. Like I'm totally fine with like being in a hole and staying there. And I don't like doing extracurricular activities with people outside of work normally. I have my own friends and family, and this is how kind of some introverts feel. And you have to navigate that space, the introverts and the extroverts. You might, if you start doing the mandatory fun thing, you might turn some of your employees off. So, we got to figure out ways to deal with remote. That's for everybody.
And that comes down to knowing your people, right? And understanding what motivates them, and finding ways to inspire them to want to do the work that needs to be done and feel like they belong there, right? Everybody wants to feel seen, heard, valued, and understood. That is, without question, what humans need. in order to feel like they belong somewhere. And if we can find ways to do that and create cultures that are inclusive enough to allow everyone to feel that way, then we will have accomplished something. That's the culture where people want to be. That's an organization where people are like, wow, you can totally be yourself there and feel okay with it. Now, it doesn't mean that everything goes, right? There are definitely parameters. Just inclusive doesn't mean it's a free-for-all, but it means that everyone is welcome to bring their strengths and their challenges into this workplace, and we see value in all the variability of different types of people and different behaviors and learning styles and thinking styles and all of that kind of stuff. It's so much more than just one-dimensional. And I think it's important that folks understand that. So you make a great point about outside activities or things that we do that some call team building and some of us cringe, right? Like I don't like going to like team luncheons. I just no. Like, I don't. And I am, I'm a trained performer, and I believe you are as well. I can be on stage all day long and do what I need to do. But when it's my time, I need to be by myself. Like I don't want the party after the party kind of thing, which a lot of people do. And that's great that they do, but not everybody does.
Mm-hmm. So I like that performer fact.
Yes, it is true. Right. And you learn how to hone that skill. But when you need time for yourself, you need time for yourself. And that's what a lot of us who are performers are like that. And that's why it doesn't make a lot of sense to people. Oh, you're so great when you're on stage or when you're doing your show or whatever. You must be an extrovert. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't know the energy it takes out of me to do that on repeat over and over and over again. So, and a lot of people are like that. That's great to understand that. Bonnie has a question. What challenges have you seen in the hybrid workspace? Well, there's a lot of them. Brittany just, highlighted one, that the challenges that introverts and extroverts have in the workspace. And I think the hybrid model works really well for a lot of truly introverted people. And yet, there are challenges with feeling that connectivity. And so it's important to find ways to connect with people in ways that resonate with them. So as a leader, it can be scheduling one-on-one Zoom meetings so that you can talk to people, or just a phone call where you're not on camera. There's a lot of those types of things I think that people are doing now so that they are creating that safe space of connection without it being so forced and having to make sure that your hair's on point and you're not in your sweats or whatever. If you want to have that meeting, just have a phone call. It's fine. It's fine to have a phone call with somebody. We've lost the art of having a phone call in the business world these days. So that would be one thing. When we get back to the culture piece and the some of the work you do, I love your post because you're super feisty, which I love, and you're unapologetic in your approach of like, hey guys, if you're doing this and you wonder why your culture sucks, take a look in the mirror, right? And I think that's great because we need more people who are not afraid to speak your truth and not afraid to do it in a way that works for you, because you're going to attract your ideal client by doing that, right? By being authentically who you are and knowing your own values. So I'd love to hear from you. How do you bring your personal values into the work you do, which then ultimately influences the cultures of the organizations where you're working?
Funny enough, one of mine, even though it's one of the Air Forces I kind of took it to, was integrity. Because as a person, I take it very seriously. Like if someone maybe doesn't believe something I say, I get pissed. Like I'm not the one that everything I say, I mean, whether you like it or not. So for someone not to believe me, because, I've been in the space when I was in the Air Force where someone questioned my integrity, and that was a personal slight. Like you just took, one of our, that's one of our values. That's one of my values. Like you're saying pretty much I'm a bad person. Well, who are you talking to? So I've taken that into my now new space with work culture consultant because I want to have integrity with my clients. And so one of my other values is transparency, and they go together. because I need to be transparent with you, even if you're not going to like it. Yeah. Because like you said, you maybe have these clients that are like, you have a problem. Usually it hasn't been my client that's a problem. Usually it's like his or her right hand that's the problem. And they don't like hearing it. And they might even tell me that they know said person is the problem, but they're not going to let that person go.
Yeah.
And that's a fun space. But that's how, transparency, integrity, and teamwork is my third one, because it has to be a teamwork. It can't just be me talking to myself. I don't like talking just to talk. I want my clients to take in and be receptive to what I'm saying. And then we, as a party, need to go and figure trickle everything down. You can't just make your values and then, okay, that's it. You have to communicate them. We have to make people understand, like you said, which each side of the coin with these values, and we need to let them know, with their evaluations, that's a standard, and we always come back to that. It's almost like, what would Jesus do? I mean, whether you're Christian or not, I'm not either, but it's like that WWJD. Okay, what would we do when it comes to our values? Let's always go back to, am I using integrity? Am I using transparency? Or am I doing teamwork? You just always come back to it every single time.
Yeah. I love that because it really is the foundation from which everything else grows, right? When you look at the different elements of the employee experience, we have attraction, selection, onboarding, we have growth, we have transition, we have retention, and then we have exit, right? And through each one of those stages, the foundation and cornerstone for healthy cultures is your values, right? We want to espouse our values espouse our values so that we are attracting people who align with our values, right? And there's a lot of conversation out there in the world today, especially in the DE&I space, around culture fit and culture add. And I get that. And I don't want to get so granular that we go down rabbit holes, but aligning with the culture of an organization is very important. Now, we don't want to use culture as a crutch because we don't like someone, right? We don't want to not offer someone a job and couch it with, well, they're not a culture fit, because that is an excuse and you're masking something behind that, right? So when I have these conversations with my clients, I force them to go beyond that. I'm like, culture fit is an excuse. Give me the real reason. And then you drill them down until they actually get to it, because it's just not okay to say that. Understand what it is that's not aligning. But a culture alignment is very, very important. Like I said, when we first started the show today, I knew the military was never an option for me unless I had to. Of course, I would have if I had been drafted or something. But I just didn't align with the type of work, with the way the infrastructure, all of that. I was like, no, that's not going to work for me. Mad respect for it and for people who can be successful within that framework, but I knew that wasn't for me. We make friends with people who we align with, like attracts like. And so organizations have to understand that as well. So if you want to attract what you consider top talent, but you haven't defined your values and you're not using them in your attraction messages, in your selection process, in your performance review, in your everyday language, how are people to know who you are? Because your brand doesn't mean anything. It's just a logo that you've created, and we know what you do, but we don't know why you do it, how you do it, and what's important to you. And that's what people want to know more now than ever before. When we look at the multiple generations in the workforce today, the older generations, the baby boomers, I'm Gen X, is very different than millennials and Gen Zs, who care equally, if not more, about purpose and connection than they do about the actual tactical work they're doing. They want to believe in it and they want to feel like they're making a contribution. So if you're not positioning your company in that way, how are people to connect and understand who you are and what you're about? So I think you're spot on with the work you're doing and how you're bringing that forward to your clients. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Oh, hey, Lorena. So if you guys don't know Lorena, she's a guest watching us today. She is a mentor of mine. We've become dear friends. I'm doing this because I want everybody to know if you're considering branding yourself, Lorena is who you want to talk to. She's got over 1.5 million followers on LinkedIn, all organic. She's amazing. And we have a lot of conversations about this very topic because personal branding and company branding are the same, right? It's values-based. Shared values and alignment is what it's all about. It boils down to it. And so, Lorena, thank you for being here and thank you for your comment because I think it's so important for folks to understand that. We used to call it your reputation. Now it's your brand. Same damn thing, right? Same thing. What do people say about you when you leave the room? What do people say about your company when you're not there to correct them, right? That's your brand, and that's what you need to be aware of. So it's so important. So we got about 10 minutes left. I just want to make sure, tell me, who is your ideal client right now? If people are watching, and I'll post this to my YouTube channel and we'll share it, but if people are watching and they're like, oh, I'm interested in learning more about this or working with Brittany, who is your ideal client and what's the best way for them to find you and reach out to you?
Thank you. I like real early seed, pre-seed, startup stage clients. I mean, I'm not going to turn anybody away, but ideal. I just really like to start working at that phase because I feel like there's less people involved, which kind of is better sometimes, especially when you're trying to establish a culture. And because if you don't know your culture and you don't know your values, how can you expect other people to? So I like early stage. And if you, LinkedIn is one of my big things, Brittany Lenhart, Lenhart, and also workcultureconsultant.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful you joined me today, and I'm very conscious of on time, so I don't want to go past our hour. I protect my time and the time of my guests, very, very diligently because I appreciate you giving me this time and our guests this time. But if there's one thing you want people to know about you or your business, what would it be?
Oh, good question. I just care about people's mental health. That's really what this all comes down to. Is culture can make or break somebody as well, and productivity comes from culture too. And so you can have people who are really productive and happy, or you can have people that are miserable and you don't have good productivity. Which one do you want?
Yeah. And I love that you said that. One of the things I find really important and valuable, and I have a partnership with folks over at Daily Pay, and I help them craft some of their client-facing messages because I was a client of theirs and I absolutely love their product. If anybody watching is interested, reach out to me and I'll fill you in. But what I love about their product is it allows, so Daily Pay is it's an on-demand pay system, and they're kind of like the OG in this space, right? And what I love about it is it's a benefit that helps employees that's not directly tied to productivity. And this is where I think organizations really need to understand. It's one thing to coach and develop and provide learning opportunities and growth opportunities for your people to help them get better, be more productive, more efficient, and grow their skills. Absolutely, 100% support that. We also need to support them outside of productivity. To your point, their mental health, their overall well-being. How do we contribute to their lives holistically? Because they're contributing to the overall success of this organization, which if you're the CEO or the COO or someone at an executive level, your compensation is significantly higher than that frontline worker. And that frontline worker is likely making your product, interacting with your clients, and doing the work that's enabling you to make that salary, to have
Oh no.
People, that was weird.
Right? I was like, okay, we're back.
What that was all about. But creating and bringing forward benefit offerings that holistically helps people outside of tying it to efficiencies and productivities, that's where you're going to get loyalty and higher retention rates because people will feel cared for. And it's one of the reasons I love the daily pay product because you're giving people access to their earned wages that haven't been paid yet at any time. And it's not a loan. There's no interest that they're paying. It is through an app, and they could have worked 20 hours out of their 40 hours. They get a flat tire on the way to work. They don't have cash in their account. They can go into their app. They can transfer the $100 they need into their account instantly, get the tire fixed, and get to work. And it doesn't cause this snowball of financial damage to that family. Right. So it's an amazing product. And I talk about it quite a bit. And I've been approached by a lot of organizations to kind of be their face and talk, and I don't know. People have said I'm an influencer, which is just weird, but whatever. So, right. It's just weird.
I was like, facts, you are.
Oh, well, thanks. But I've turned everybody down except for daily pay. And I actually have a unique relationship with them that I love because really all I do is help people understand what their product is. I speak the language of HR so I can help people understand how their product works. And I am more than happy to do that forever because I believe in it. And it really does help employees in ways that you'll never know. We've had people say, I had to choose between buying medication for my kid or paying my electric bill. And now they don't have to do that because they can access their own money whenever they want to, right? Huge. Like it's a game changer, but companies need to be more creative and seek out these types of benefits, right? If you can help people in ways that makes their life better outside of work, that is when people feel cared for. So whether it's mental health benefits, whether it's financial wellness benefits, whether there's so many opportunities out there, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, right? It can be things that are inexpensive, but have a huge impact. And I think that's really where companies need to start looking as we go forward, especially post-COVID, or if we're ever post-COVID, to figure out ways in which we can help bring balance back for people because it's been so out of balance for so long. I think anyway, this is my my opinion. So Brittany, I thank you so much for being here. It was such an honor to have you on. I love your content. I love your feisty approach. I love that you are not afraid to say what's on your mind, whether people like it or not. And that's what makes you you. And I think that's fabulous because that's what your clients hire you for, right? Is to tell them what your opinion is so that you can help them get better. And so if any of you are looking, check out Brittany's LinkedIn page, her website. I don't know if you're on other social. Oh, you're on TikTok. I know you're on TikTok because I keep watching your videos and I'm like, how does she do that? I still haven't figured out TikTok. One day I will.
Yes, it'll be fun.
It would be fun. I honestly, I don't understand how to use it, but one day I will. But thank you all. Thank you everyone who joined us. I truly appreciate you being here. Absolutely love this weekly platform, all of your engagement. I will post this as soon as it downloads. And join me next week. Brittany, next time you're in Tampa at MacDill, you better let me know because I'm legit like 2 miles up the road. I live on MacDill Avenue.
Really?
Yes. No, so I am right there.
No excuses.
My wife and I joke all the time that we live right so close to Central Command that if, God forbid, if we ever are attacked, we're toast. We're done because we are within 2 miles of that base. But it's not necessarily a bad thing because I wouldn't have to suffer.
It'd be quick.
That's what we say all the time. We're like, we're never moving because at least it'd be done and over with, right? So, yes, I'm very close to the base. So you have to come see me next time you're in Tampa.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Tuesday.